The dusty attic of the old house on Hemlock Lane held the stillness of a forgotten century. For Clara, it was the final chore in a season of loss. Her grandmother, Eleanor, was gone, and the task of clearing the Victorian-era home had fallen to her. The late afternoon sun sliced through the grimy circular window, illuminating dancing dust motes and the hulking shapes of sheet-draped furniture. In the farthest corner, behind a wicker trunk filled with moth-eaten furs, she found it. A steamer trunk of dark leather, its surface embossed with faded floral patterns, secured by two sturdy brass clasps. There was no key, but the lock was old and rusted. With a firm tug from a pair of pliers she'd brought for such eventualities, it snapped open. The lid creaked upward, releasing a scent of cedar and old paper. Inside, neatly stacked and tied with faded ribbons, were bundles of letters, hundreds of them. But as Clara lifted the first bundle, she realized with a pang of sadness that none had ever been sent. There were no addresses, no stamps. Each envelope was blank, save for a single name written in her grandmother's elegant, looping script: Theodore. Clara had never heard of a Theodore. She sat back on her heels, her heart aching with a new kind of grief. She had thought she'd known her grandmother, the quiet gardener, the maker of jam, the woman who'd raised her after Clara's parents had passed. This trunk suggested a life of profound secrecy. Unable to resist, she untied the first bundle. The paper was brittle, the ink a faded brown. The date at the top read June 12, 1946. My dearest Theodore, the lilacs are in bloom by the gate. Their scent carries on the evening air, and every time it catches me unawares, I am transported back to that afternoon by the lake. You said the color reminded you of my eyes. I look in the mirror now and see a woman grown, but in that moment I was just a girl, and you were the sun. Clara read on, her breath catching. This was not the voice of the grandmother she knew. This was the voice of a young woman, passionately in love. The letter spoke of stolen meetings, of whispered promises, of a future they had dreamed of building together. It ended abruptly, with a tear stain blurring the word always. She devoured letter after letter. They chronicled a summer of intense, all-consuming romance. Theodore was an artist visiting Willowbrook for the season. He had painted her portrait by the old mill. He had talked of taking her to Paris. But as the summer of 1946 waned, a new tension entered the letters. Eleanor's family, prominent and traditional, had arranged a marriage for her with a man from a suitable family, Clara's grandfather, Arthur, a kind, steady man who ran the local bank. September 3, 1946. My dearest Theodore, father has given his final word. It is to be Arthur Mills. I pleaded, I cried, but it is done. They speak of security, of reputation, as if the heart is a ledger to be balanced. We are to meet tomorrow at our spot. You must have a plan. I cannot breathe when I think of a life without you. The next letter was dated a week later. The script was shaky, stained with what looked like old tears. Theodore, I waited, from dawn until dusk by the oak tree where we first kissed. You never came. The world has lost its color. Arthur called today. He brought flowers. I could not look him in the eye. Clara felt a hot tear trace a path through the dust on her own cheek. The betrayal was palpable, a wound across decades. The subsequent letters were shorter, darker. They chronicled Eleanor's marriage to Arthur, the birth of Clara's father, the slow settling of a life built on duty, not love. The letters to Theodore became a diary of a quiet desperation, a secret outlet for a heart that had never healed. She wrote of Arthur's kindness, which she felt she could never properly repay, and of the crushing guilt of her own emotional absence. January 15, 1952. My dearest Theodore, William took his first steps today. Arthur was so proud. He held the boy aloft, his laughter filling the house, and all I could think was that it should have been you. I am a ghost in my own life, Theodore, a ghost who tends the garden and writes letters to a man who forgot her. For days, Clara lived in the attic, piecing together the story. The letters spanned 50 years. The passionate grief of the young woman slowly mellowed into the reflective melancholy of the old. The name Theodore was a constant thread, weaving through the tapestry of her grandmother's long life. There were no more mentions of him after the first few years, no news, no sightings. He had vanished completely, leaving only a ghostly presence in Eleanor's heart and in this trunk. The mystery consumed Clara, Who was Theodore? Why had he abandoned her? Using the scant clues from the letters, his profession, the summer of 1946, the fact that he was from the city, she began to search online. It was a needle in a haystack. Days of fruitless searching turned up nothing. Frustrated, she decided to visit the town's historical society, housed in a cramped room above the library. Mrs. Higgins, the elderly curator, remembered Alina well. Such a lovely woman, so quiet, always tending her roses. But when Clara tentatively mentioned the name Theodore, Mrs. Higgins's eyes lit up with recognition. Theodore Vance, the painter. Oh, yes, he was quite famous for a time, did some of his early work here in Willowbrook. There was quite a scandal, as I recall. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. A scandal. Well, not a scandal, precisely. A tragedy. Mrs. Higgins led her to a filing cabinet and pulled out a large, leather-bound scrapbook. She turned the brittle pages until she found a small, yellowed newspaper clipping from September 1946. The headline read, "Promising young artist missing, presumed drowned." The article stated that Theodore Vance, 24, had failed to return from a sketching trip to Lake Serene. His rented boat had been found overturned, his sketchbook and supplies washed ashore. The search had been called off after 3 days. "The poor dear," Mrs. Higgins clucked. "They never found the body, such a waste of talent." Clara stumbled out of the historical society, the photocopy of the article clutched in her hand. He hadn't abandoned her. He had never received her desperate plea because he was already gone. He had died believing she had chosen her family's wishes over him. The tragedy was deeper and more profound than she had ever imagined. Her grandmother had spent a lifetime writing to a ghost, her love forever frozen in time, untainted by the reality of his fate. That evening, Clara returned to the trunk. She took out the final letter. It was dated just a month before Alina's death. The handwriting was tremulous, the letters sprawling with age. "My dearest Theodore, the doctor says my time is short. It is a strange thing to face the end. I am not afraid. I have lived a long life, been a mother, a grandmother. Arthur was a good man, and I hope I have been a good wife to him in my way. But you, Theodore, you have been the secret melody of my life. The song I hummed while gardening, the memory that warmed me on cold nights. I never stopped waiting for you by that oak tree. In my heart, I am still the girl with the lilac-colored eyes. Wherever you are, I will find you. And I will finally ask you why you never came. Wait for me. All my love always. You're Alina." Tears streamed down Clara's face. It was a story of a love that was, in its own way, perfectly preserved. It had never been marred by the compromises and disappointments of a shared life. It remained an ideal, a beautiful, heartbreaking dream that had sustained her grandmother for a lifetime. Clara knew what she had to do. She couldn't send the letters, there was no address for the past, but she could complete the circle. She packed the trunk into her car and drove to the old mill, now a ruin by a sleepy stream. She found the giant oak tree, still standing sentinel, and there, beneath its gnarled roots, she dug a small hole. She didn't bury the entire trunk. Instead, she took the first letter and the last and placed them together in a simple wooden box. She lowered the box into the earth, covering it with the rich, dark soil. It was not a burial of sadness, but a planting, a returning of the words to the place where the love had bloomed. The letters never sent had finally reached their destination, not across miles, but across time. As she stood to leave, the wind rustled the leaves of the oak tree, and for a moment, Clara could almost smell lilacs on the air. She didn't feel the weight of sadness anymore, but a sense of peace. Her grandmother's secret was not a burden of sorrow, but a testament to the enduring power of a first, true love, a love that, though never fulfilled, had shaped a life and now, finally, had been understood.